On February 18, 2013, President Mitch Daniels appointed you as Chief of Staff. Can you recall how it felt to receive that news?
Well, interestingly, that it didn't exactly work that way. So I had known Mitch for many, many years before I became his Chief of Staff. In fact, as you mentioned, Marie, I had worked in his administration when he was governor. So it was more that he asked me, we were at a party celebrating the end of his gubernatorial administration, and he just came over and he said, come with me to Purdue. And, for all of you who know Mitch, you don't say no. And at the time I was already a chief of staff working at the Commission for Higher Education. But the idea of working for Mitch as president of Purdue University was not something I could turn down. So it was more of a, you've got to do this. And I said, okay.
How long did you have to decide?
Oh, a nanosecond. It was, you got to come do this. And so
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm there. I was there yesterday. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. So what is it? How does one become a chief of staff?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I think I'm right about this. When I consider all the people that I know that serve as chiefs of staff, including all of the Big Ten chiefs of staff, it's not a blind partnership. In other words, the chief of staff knows the principal in a prior life, as I did with Mitch during his gubernatorial administration. So usually the chiefs of staff have served as some other form of staff member to the presidents that they work with in the university. I mean, and that's uniformly the case. So I think what has to happen is the principal, the president or the CEO or whatever we're talking about, has to know that the person is trustworthy, has to know that there's a companionability between the two, has to have confidence that the person is right for the job. So I'm not sure that I've ever seen a job posting for chief of staff. It's just not really the way it works. I think that symbiotic relationship has to exist beforehand. And I think that's the way it happened in my case. In both of the times that I served as chief of staff, when I was chief of staff for the Commissioner for Higher Education, I had known Teresa Lubbers for 20 years. And she'd asked me twice before I actually said yes to come be her chief of staff. So that relationship, I think, really needs to be a foregone conclusion.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you describe what the day in the life of Gina DelSanto looks like?
Oh my goodness. So I usually get to I'm not an early riser. So I usually get to the office about 8:15, and Mitch and I brief first thing in the morning around 8:30. And, he gives me what he wants to see done during the day. And, I come back to my office. I spend about 10, 12 hours a day sitting at this desk in this chair at my computer. And what I do is I work to see those things to fruition. In the Big Ten Chiefs of Staff, we had a first meeting of the Big Ten Chiefs of Staff, about 8 years ago. And we all decided that the job of Chief of Staff really has just one line job description, which is make it so. And that's why I titled tonight's presentation, Make It So. Because that's what your job is. The job is to take guidance from your principal, in this case, the president of the university, and then to figure out how to get that objective accomplished by working with the leadership of the university, whether it's the deans, the vice presidents, executive vice presidents, some of the senior staff members around the university, the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, whoever it might be, and say, well, this is what we'd like to get done. This is what we need. This is the information I've been asked to get by the president. Then after lunch, we brief again. I tell Mitch what I found out about the morning's queries and questions and assignments, and he gives me a new load. And then before the end of the day, we brief again and close out with the new objectives and the information that I've been able to get. So I attend very few meetings. On occasion, Mitch has a conflict with the meeting, so I attend on his behalf. But for the most part, it's really just a give and take. And my job is to make it so. And, I know that I've known that the whole time that I've worked here. It's not the kind of job that I've done in the past. The kind of job that I did during his gubernatorial administration was decision-making and setting the strategic agenda. And I'd have to say that that's one of the most important things that I've learned in this job is, you've got to know what the job is. You can't go into a job thinking it's going to be, greatly glamorous and always adventurous all the time. In this particular case, I'm not the president of the university. I'm not the provost. I'm not a dean. I'm not the chief of police. What I do is work with those individuals to try to move the agenda of the president and the board of trustees forward. And so that's how I spend my days. One thing I do to make sure that the rest of the team here in the office is aware is every time a decision is made of any kind of significance, I add it to what's called guidance for the day. And at the end of the day, I send that guidance to all of the members here in the president's office so that everybody's on the same page. And that the next day, they can do kind of a division of labor and say, well, I'm going to do numbers 1 through 5. And, Maggie, if you could do 7 and 9, that'd be great. And that way, everybody knows what's going on and everybody can kind of act as a team and make sure the guidance that we've received from the president gets enacted.
Okay. Wow, that's a very, very long day then for you, I believe. It must be extremely, I don't know, to have to accomplish so much. I mean, you meet with him 3 times a day, and that's 3 task loads.
Well, minimally, right? And then
minimally.
times he walks in my office or gives me a call saying, come visit. So yeah, I mean, it's it has to be that way because, quite frankly, the president is back to back to back to back. Everybody always wants to know, what's it like to work for Mitch? I had a basal cell carcinoma on my forehead that had to be removed surgically. And the guy was an FOM, a fan of Mitch. And so there I am with my head back in this chair. He's carving on my head, removing this thing, and just wants to talk about Mitch. And I'm like, why not? Let's focus on the mission at hand. But everybody wants to know what it's like to work for Mitch. But we schedule him in 15-minute increments all day long. And that's a tremendous amount of work. And I mean, it's meeting with people, it's doing an interview on CNBC, it's, meeting with a group of folks that the student reamers want to have their paddle signed. it's just an absolutely chock full day. You know, he's got more capacity than anybody I have ever met in my life. And so we run fast around here. And thank goodness for the team of fantastic staff that work here. We rarely drop a stitch, and a lot of water does flow over our dam, that's for sure.
Okay, well, thank you. So make it so it's extremely appropriate at this, for this talk. So thank you for that. So how do you make yourself available as a liaison to faculty without appearing as a gatekeeper to the president?
To the faculty?
Faculty or staff or
Yeah.
students, if you want.
Yeah, so, you know, with Mitch, there is no such thing as guarding the gate. You know, people stop by, and if he's got 5 minutes, he'll just,
Okay.
you know, come out into the lobby and chat with them. So, you know, there is no guarding the gate. Any faculty member that wants to have a conversation with the president just needs to send him a note saying, you know, I'd like to, you know, discuss this idea or this problem with you. Can we get together? And the answer is always yes. Come by. We'll find 15-30 minutes where we can visit. So I think a lot of leaders make a mistake of wanting to be guarded, wanting to have the gate guarded. But, you know, around here, our motto is, you know, every phone call is returned immediately. Every email is responded to. And, you know, Mitch reads every message that he gets, every email, every letter, every note card himself, and insists upon responding to those things. And I think that's the way it should be. That's what real transparency is in a leader.
Wonderful to hear how accessible he is. So thank you for what do you feel are some of the most important? I know you mentioned them earlier qualities to look for in the chief of staff is trustworthiness, but can you elaborate more on that?
Right. I add to that, you know, a willingness to work in the background. You know, again, I'm not the president, and nobody elected me to do anything. So this is not a high ego position. This is a position where you know that the only opinion that matters is Mitch's. When I provide his guidance to members of the staff around the university, I always make sure they're aware this is not Gina talking. This is Mitch Daniels talking. And when it comes time for me to possibly interject my own opinion, I always say caveat Gina's opinion, and then I put down what I'm thinking on a particular matter. That's just what the job is. Now, it may sound like that is mindless in some way, but it's not. It's being faithful to the mission. It's being faithful to the principle. And, you know, again, there have been times in my life and throughout my career when I was the decider, and I expected my staff to move the agenda forward. And that's what my role is. That's what I do currently and have done for, you know, going on 10 years. It's all about Purdue, but it is as varied as you could possibly imagine, from, you know, working with all of the colleges, all of the vice presidents, working with all of the various functions of the university. And, you know, I know people across the university, and it's great to have such wonderful colleagues and folks that are so eager to see Purdue deliver its mission of teaching and learning and research.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm just going to take a pause really. Can everybody hear me? I got some messages in the chat that some people had a tough time hearing me. Can you hear me okay? Okay, Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. So thank you, Gina. The next question I have is, it appears the chief of staff position could feel isolated at times. Thinking back, what are some things that you did to mitigate that?
Well, isolated, you've got to be willing to deliver bad news. You've got to be willing to hold people's feet to the fire. So, in that sense, sometimes it feels a little bit lonely, but, not with the staff that I work with here in the office, not with the great crew of people that I have the chance to work with throughout the university. It's more of a matter of approach. And, what I mean by that is, a chief of staff can go through the institution with elbows out. And that's just not my style. I prefer to handle every situation with a request. May I trouble you to? May I impose upon you for? May I beg your assistance with? Rather than do this, do that, do whatever I'm asked to carry forward. Kindness gets you a long way. Being courteous, being grateful, and of all things, I am grateful to the people who work at this place and work so hard and so diligently to try to give our students and our faculty what they need. And that makes it easy. Beyond Purdue, I've got great friends and spend a lot of time with my husband entertaining and doing new things and meeting new people. So I never feel lonely. I feel invigorated by the opportunity to work amongst such lovely people.
Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. Very good. So what does a new chief of staff most need to know, and which relationships do you need to build from the first day of a job as chief of staff?
The thing that you need to know, and that I've needed to know, and everybody would do this job very, very differently than the way I've done it. But the thing you need to do is you need to meet people where they are. Everybody is different. Some people are quiet, some people are boisterous, some people get their back up easily, some people you can just say anything you need to say to. So you've got to know the people that you're working with, and you've got to know their foibles, you've got to know their proclivities and work with that. So I may have the same question that I need to pose to 5 different people, but I might do it in 5 different ways. Some people like to talk on the phone rather than get an email message. You need to meet people where they are and give them the kind of respect that they are hoping for. Always respect undergirds it, but sometimes it takes a different form. And knowing who is a kidder, knowing who is incredibly serious, that helps you. That helps you. That helps you navigate. That helps you move through and connect with people. Other than that, you just need to figure out who does what and remember it, and just connect with as many people as you can, and figure out who owns what programs and how to work with them as best as possible. Does that make sense?
That does. Meeting people where they are and trying and just being grateful for all that. I was just thinking, you must have an amazing, expansive Rolodex, and having to keep notes and being able to know if they're a kidder or if they're more serious, if they like the telephone. That means that you've established quite a lengthy or deep relationship with different individuals, or very fast to be able to get to keep up with President Daniel's speed of wanting results very fast also.
Yeah, it's something that I've developed over time. I I used to go through life with my elbows out, but I learned very quickly that that's not the way to go. If you think people are going to always try to hurt you, if you think that people aren't on your side, if they don't have their own positive intentions, and almost everybody's got positive intentions. Sometimes they differ from your own positive intentions, but you can work with it if you get to know that person and you get to know, what their role is within the university. And that has always served me well. But as I said, everybody would do this job in a slightly different fashion.
Yeah. And so that leads to the next question. How has your job evolved since the first day?
Evolved. I'm not sure the job is any different than it was when I first started. What I can tell you is I've gotten faster at it, and I think I've gotten, if I can pat myself on the back, I think I've gotten better at it than I was certainly at the beginning. But I'm not sure the job has really evolved. It is what it is, and I've known that right from the get-go.
Okay. A question that someone had asked me to ask you is, what are the key skills needed for a chief of staff to build to best handle crises on campus?
To handle crises, stay calm. Is there that now hackneyed British phrase? Stay calm and curry on. You've got to stay calm. You can't. I guess I've seen an awful lot. To get rattled in any given situation means you're going to convey that to the other members of the team, and they don't need that. They need calm, they need steady, they need somebody who is somewhat decisive. But one of the key ingredients to that is also take feedback, take input, hear how are you going to handle it? There may be an infinite number of things that you could hear, and you don't need an infinite number of opinions in a crisis. But there are people that that you can turn to because you trust them, you have a relationship with them, and they can give you their best suggestions as well. So just stay calm. If what the worst thing that has happened at Purdue since I've been here was when Andrew Bolt was shot. And that was a horrible, horrible day. But, the relationships existed between the police, fire, ambulance, the legal counsel, the provost's office, the entire leadership structure of the university. We had those relationships in place, and that allowed us to respond quickly, and it allowed us to, address what the campus needed at that point. I hope we never go through anything like that again, but you've just got to take one problem, solve the problem, move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that's the best solution that I've ever been able to come up with.
Thank you. And thank you for that example. And also another recent example is COVID and how that was managed, being one of the universities that handled the way we did. So would you like to speak on that?
Sure, I'm happy to. We started with a big meeting that included most of the senior staff of the university and several of the deans, where we talked through just a litany of problems that could come up when, when we were looking at COVID. And this was early on. This was in April of 2020, when we didn't even know what the thing was, or what was going to make the difference between you having very mild symptoms or needing a ventilator. Nobody knew. I see Marion Underwood is here. She pointed out to all of us, there's no vaccine for this. None of us are immunized against this. But what we had to do is make a simple decision. Simple in that it was a go or no go decision. Were we going to open for the fall or were we not? And Mitch heard all the evidence and heard all of the things that needed to get accomplished if we were going to open in the fall. And we had pretty much 15 weeks to get it to a point of being able to do something. But he said at that point, he said, look, if we as this university, as Purdue University and all its great people, can't figure out how to open for business so that our students can continue on with their education uninterrupted, then we don't deserve to be here. So that was it. The decision was made, and then it just went into high gear. A core group of people, probably 15 of us, we met every single morning for 18 months at 8:30 in the morning to discuss the most recent updates, what was needed, which member of the team needed what from whom. And it was just an absolute consensus that we were going to get this thing achieved. And when you think about all the things that got set up during that time, we're on Zoom. Nobody had Zoom. Look, we're all gathered here tonight on Zoom. That didn't exist at any significant level. Our classrooms weren't equipped to handle that kind of instruction. We needed to set up a testing and facility and a protocol to do it. We made mistakes. We bought, the famous 5 miles of plexiglass to put up around workstations and to put in a screen in every classroom. Not everything worked, but at some point that's okay. Figure out the best things that you know at the moment, persevere with them, push them through, get them done, and you get to the finish line. And for all intents and purposes, we've gotten, knock wood, to the finish line with this. A new vaccine's coming out, and we're going to encourage the university community to take advantage of that. And hopefully this thing that captured us, that held us hostage for 2 years, will become something that is regularized, like the annual flu. Okay. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but COVID was a great example of how a team comes together and sets egos aside, sets differences aside, and focuses on one problem after the next, after the next, after the next, until you can cross the finish line.
Mm-hmm. No, for the benefit of the students. So thank you. That was an excellent answer. While we're talking about students, Joanna in the chats said, if you recall what are 1 or 2 student interactions which stand out in your time at Purdue?
Maria, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. What 1 or 2 student interactions which stand out to you at your time at Purdue?
Student interactions, is that what you said? Okay.
Student interactions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we knew Tyler Trent. We knew Tyler Trent right from the time that he matriculated at Purdue. And what a remarkable young man he was, and someone who could teach us all a
Mhm.
lesson in living gracefully and acceptance and finding meaning. Just an extraordinary young man. So he'll always stand out in my mind. I teach here in the Cornerstone program, which is kind of an equivalent to freshman composition and a smattering of history and philosophy and literature all thrown together. And I've encountered just a tremendous number of really sharp and dedicated and diligent students. When I compare Purdue students to the students that I taught at Butler University, at Middlebury College, at Indiana University, the one thing I would have to say about Purdue students is that they are incredibly dedicated to their studies. They're diligent, they're kind, and they are thoughtful about how they approach their undergraduate experience at Purdue. They're all willing to just suck the marrow out of their education. And that's a really great thing to see.
Mhm. Mhm. Great. Thank you, Joanne, for that question, and thank you, Gina. What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders?
Of female leaders. The first thing I would suggest, and far be it for me to try to give advice to young people, but here's what I would say. Know yourself. Really always get to know yourself a little bit better, and to watch very, very carefully. You're going to encounter a tremendous number of diverse people, and almost everybody has some kind of lesson to teach you. They can contribute something, even if it's a negative example. So watch people. How are they making decisions? How are they constructing their own profession? What do you like about it? What would you prefer not to emulate within those contexts? So keep learning. Know the job and become an expert at your job. You can only move forward if you really understand what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and the substance of the discipline itself. And then I'd say, do everything you can to contribute. Once you know what you're doing, do everything you can to contribute to the advancement of the institution. If you want to get ahead, one of the best ways to do it is to help solve a tricky problem, to offer an interesting solution, and to offer to be one of the people that carries that forward. Raise your hand, but don't raise your hand if you don't think you're going to be able to deliver. And then finally, one last piece of advice is that, once you get a seat at the table, make sure you own that seat at the table. You can't sit there quietly and just take it all in. You're at the table, whatever table it is, you're at the table because you've been given an opportunity to contribute. And so it means you've got to contribute. So those are the kinds of things that I would suggest. And always remain humble, and don't become dour. The only people who seem to like dour people are the Scots. So don't be dour. Be optimistic. Keep a sense of humor. Be happy. Put on a smile when you talk to people, and always think they've got positive intentions.
I love that. So if I'm going to repeat those 5 tips because I think they were wonderful. Know yourself. You can learn from anyone, so observe carefully. Know the job, become an expert, own the seat, not just take a seat at the table. Be humble and optimistic, and always expect that others have good intentions. I love that. So
And try to contribute, contribute to your organization's bottom line. Be thinking, well, what could help this organization to take a better step, to take a next step, to save money, to save resources, to improve the bottom line. Always be thinking about that. And then ask for the assignment, raise your hand and deliver.
I love what Amy in the chat said. I love your words of wisdom. I know that's why we're recording this, everyone, so we can re-listen to some of these, some of her advice. So thank you. If anybody has questions for Gina, please put them in the chat because it's because we're at that time right now that I can take questions from the audience. So please put them in the chat as while we're waiting. I have two more questions for you. First is, as we approach the presidential transitions, what are some steps you will take to make that go smoothly?
Well, I think we're in pretty good shape here within the office. Many of the staff members will remain here in the office as Mung takes over. He's going to be an absolutely terrific president for us all. We'll do anything we can. We'll keep good archives. We always have. We'll keep the archives so that historical information is available. We'll provide access to all the letter library that we've developed over the years. Anything and everything that we absolutely can to make the transition smooth. We all know his team and they know us. So I think it'll be an easy go.
Okay, good to know. Brandy in the chat said, thank you. Loved your advice of meeting people where they are at. My question is, how do you conduct your business without being involved in meetings?
Well, I do participate in some meetings, but usually, usually the guidance that I get from, the president is, okay, we've got to answer the questions. I'm looking over at my desk and this document on my pile of stuff to do. University Senate met yesterday and they asked a series of questions. And those questions need to be answered. And so Mitch and I discussed them. And so my assignment is to figure out of this list of 10 questions or so, who is the best individual at the university to be able to provide the factual information that's needed in order to address the questions. So that's not a meeting, that's me contacting on the first one here, Jay Wasson, who's one of the associate vice presidents for administrative operations, who happens to oversee sustainability efforts at the university. So I'll ask him that. Another one, I've got to contact Jay Ackridge, the provost. A third one needs to be addressed by Bill Bell, our vice president of human resources. So it's just a matter of me contacting them. We don't all need to come together in a meeting. So a lot of it is that, every now and then it's a matter of gathering a few people together, but we can get on a conference call, we can get now on Zoom and, take care of things really, really quickly. The idea is not to waste time because that's just not a commodity that we have a lot of.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer there. Grace asked, your work is extremely important. How do you balance work life? How do you balance work and life?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, you don't.
So no, I work long hours. When I leave here, I exercise every day. Usually finish with that and get showered and everything by about 8:30 at night. I usually eat a bowl of cereal and have a cup of tea, and then I read. And those 2 hours where I get to read are probably the most important hours of my day, because that's for me and that's what I like to do. Or Stuart and I will go see a movie, or, we'll go out for a bite to eat instead. We'll get together with friends on weekends. But, I'm a woman who works, as probably all of you are. So weekends, it's time to clean the house and do the laundry and pick up the dry cleaning and go to the grocery store. You know how it is. You
Mhm.
feel sometimes like you're on a hamster wheel
Mhm.
or on a treadmill. And that's it. As I said before, the Greeks started with it, and it could even be before them, but at the Temple of Delphi in Greece, ancient Greece, they had all these aphorisms that were printed around the temple. And one of them that everybody seems to remember is know yourself.
Mm.
And I have worked my whole life to try to make sure that I make decisions based on self-knowledge. And one of those decisions was that I ought not be a mother. I always felt that I would be a terrible mother. I thought I would be a fantastic grandmother, but I would not be a good mother. And so we decided not to have children. So that's a sacrifice. That's something that we decided not to do. I have, dogs with Italian names instead. But you've got to know yourself and know what's important to you. And you don't take on a huge job if you are I don't take on a huge job if I'm, trying to be deeply committed to some other path through life. So those are the kinds of decisions I've had to make along the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
And
sharing that.
I suspect there are plenty of women that are out there and that are in the chat tonight who could do it all, who can do it all. I'm not one of them. And I think it was important for me to figure that out up front.
And you really carry that your aphorism of know thyself. Some people have asked, what are you reading right now?
So I'm always reading a nonfiction book and a fiction book. So the nonfiction book right now is, and actually I've got several of those going too, but I'm a medievalist by training, and there's a new book out on medieval history that was written by, I don't know if anybody has seen this show that's on BBC. And it's funny because I don't watch television, but my husband brought this one to my attention. A guy who companions with a couple of other historians, and they're doing a series on the history of Great Britain. And he's written the book that I'm reading now. Daniel Borston is now deceased, but he used to be the Librarian of Congress and just a consummate historian. And I'm reading another one of his works currently. And then in terms of fiction, I've picked up a book by Daniel Silva. It's a spy novel, and I'm really enjoying that as well.
That's fun. Great. I love this. Okay, as an educator, thank you for understanding that time is important to children. So that was Joanne Troutner saying that to you. Before I ask the last question, which some people here had asked, We do have like only a few minutes left, so I'll ask this question, then everyone get their glasses ready because we will take that picture with the cocktail. Okay, so the last question is, what's next for you, Gina?
So, I said, you solve problem and problem, then you get to cross the finish line. Well, the finish line is ahead for me. It is without doubt that every president ought to have their own chief of staff. And so, Mung will bring his own chief of staff, whoever it is, to this position. And I'm eager to work with that person through the transition. But I won't be continuing in my current position. What I anticipate doing, although nothing is decided at this point, is teaching more in the Cornerstone program and serving the university in any additional ways that I can, helping out with special projects and that kind of thing. But nothing is in stone yet. Nothing has been finalized. And, who knows, but it will be with Purdue. I've come to love this place very, very dearly and don't want to say goodbye.